This is the start of the water portion of the Mackenzie River trip and the real start of the trip. Here's a map. We're starting at Hay River on the right, going across Great Slave Lake all the way up to the circle, which is Fort Simpson, and then up to the top, which is Wrigley. It's about 640 kilometers. We are organizing our gear and packing the boat, getting ready to go. You can see we've got two motors there. The blue one is actually mine. You always go with two motors in case one quits, and in fact that's exactly what happened to us. We ended up using my little motor for the whole trip, and not bad for a motor that was from '64. 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's bundled up to keep the bugs off, not because of the cold. And we're starting so early because we're going across Great Slave Lake, and we want to make sure that the waters are calm when we do.
Okay, we're now underway, and this shows some of the boats and things that we're passing. I think this may be a cruise ship here. The last big ship was, so we may in fact see it on the river. And as you can see, it's just daybreak. And it looks like the camera doesn't really pick out how pretty it is. That's daybreak in Hay River, 4 o'clock in the morning.
When we got out onto the lake, we had some engine problems, so we're stopped here. Keith and Wayne are trying to figure it out. A pelican from the most northerly colony in the world. They nest on an island on the Hay River, very hard to get to, and they're probably here because of the lake. This gives you an idea of how big the lake is. As you can see, no shore and no boats. And as we were having engine problem, it was a little bit disconcerting, to say the least. This is our first real camp, our second night on the river, as we were staying in a cabin the night before. Miserable night, got eaten alive by bugs. This is quite typical of the camps that we have. Wayne was our chief cook, and he really made the trip, and here you can see him setting up. This is something that I have never seen before. It's a fish swimming around like that, coming out of the water. It almost looks like it's on a fishing line, but it wasn't. The fish was fine. And the only thing I can think of is it was going after bugs. That not wanting to work very well?
Oh, I guess the rubber's getting dried up on the syringe.
The river is used for by barges to deliver supplies and equipment up and down the river, and these buoys are for navigation purposes. The river starts off being clear coming out of Great Slave Lake, but it becomes filled with silt and very cloudy, and this is why, because of all the slumpage into the water like this, and all of that is carried downstream. There are various islands and things along the way, and then a huge great delta going into the Arctic Ocean. This is coming into Fort Simpson that you can see over top of Wayne's head there. That's the Liard River and the cliffs that he's looking at. And we're going to meet Wayne and Keith's wives, Heather and Betty, who brought the truck and trailer. Earlier I mentioned the barges that deliver equipment and supplies to the various communities up and down the Mackenzie. Here's an example, and as you can see by that truck there, these are pretty large. They can carry quite a bit of equipment. Yeah, I wondered if we could get... This is the ferry crossing. Fort Simpson's on the west side of the river and Wrigley's on the east side of the river, and this is the only way to get across the Mackenzie.
They do run too.
I always sat in the front so I could hop off and anchor the boat, and this was the common thing that I saw with Keith standing up driving with his red floaty on.
Yeah. There.
We're setting up camp here going from Fort Simpson on the way to Wrigley. Betty and Heather, Keith and Wayne's wives, are taking the truck and trailer and going to meet us there. Just a beautiful, peaceful evening, a great day, but the next day was absolute hell. When we started out, this is quite common there. Keith standing up, getting the motor ready, putting his earplugs in because we're using my old motor that was quite noisy. And the day, as you can see, started out quite nicely. However, it definitely changed for the worst, as you're about to see.
With a motley crew. Yeah, well, that you've got. That you've got. I can ride the Mackenzie River with the motley crew.
As you heard there, Wayne's forte definitely wasn't singing, but thank God he could cook. Here we've stopped at about lunchtime. You can see on the water there how heavily it's raining. It did that all day. If anything, the wind is diminished and there weren't very many waves on the water there, but we were soaked and wet and miserable. Wayne and I huddled under a tarp in the front, and Keith stood up and drove the whole way, and I don't know how he did it. Here we've stopped for lunch, made hot chocolate to warm up and stretch our legs, and then on to Wrigley.